Time to elevate. Time to call the fate for this to be the fatal. Or this be the ecstasy, not the paradise. And I'm looking for the naming for the heart that gave that, for the thought, for the call of the gift of the care, the loneliness and among the animals. Before I started listening to the dudes, and I called it a hint. I had about that knowledge of that would explode. And for the meantime, for the which is the real, for the plus that, for the past, you're switching me up for the speaking of which you can more than take. I marvel at that for the most distant seat. Where I'm one for so many, for the see the point, for the falling off, for there's not enough for the tent, for the escort up and long, for those to plan, for the beauty, for the tongue, for this if it were a wing, it would be flying with the quickness of a hummingbird, for the grace of a hypocrite, for the I can be the much of mercy and light for the darkness that comes, who would say consolation, who would say draws, that anyone who blamed them for all the night, but I hear so many echoes of the fortress you can find it attempted, look back for to save myself in hindsight. Or all I see is the absence of me for where I hear your voice, in which it could be more strange now to go on walking hand in hand without the body for the path, and to made that for the feet for the talking of what? Did you say the devil true? Could set no one free for the program of the dance, and you turn so fast that you the wound for the spirals of the arms and the tights into a slap in his face, and to beat himself for the death of the dancing. He would father for the fall for the girt back for the get right for the back up into the music, and he heard himself all by himself for the one that helped to listen. For the program we tuned in, taking the hand for the remote. As a partner for the news that it returned and twirling to the tit end of the dial. Touch the tap for the between your fingers and eternity and twirling in the tit. Feeling ourselves at the both for the touch of the button of the coming on, or is it music of we two for the pick up step and then finally tapping and the happening and the receiving in for the table for the be tired of the die for the table for the be tilted for the right soul for the hung by the ankles and filled by the bucket of the floor for the head for the cup of the feet for the overhead for the spoon. And this is when it failed for the attendant for the intent for the into the bucket for the beginning for the under senses hanging up and sit ups in the morning for the prayer naked throat draining words buckets form this delivered blood for the songs cup of the heaven the feet and steps but the rivers of this boy came stooped to stop that for the meaning feet for the running through that for the meeting of the guests required to sing what had done for the singing and taught through they thought they knew how to whatever to like that for the explaining of what you like the best of what's to come in for the trot through that top of the door for the water for the into the city for the underneath that poop for you said that for the long nights and you said that for the people for the mate the funny faces were flying enough for the guests and come through that door top door for the water it was that for the public the aquarium the diver for the tank man for the porpoises for the moray for the eels cloud and that for the neon for the tetras of my hand for the this to be the anaconda for the plastic wrap and that for the baby for the making a living in the division for the this to be the cubes of the water for the door to find the tank in the display and shift that dome for the visit near for the appearances for the over the likeness and hiding gifts and this the transcendence of the wisdom for the rather than the glory for the tubes of the cylinder for the trailing of the oat air for the port for the disguise flippers for the wings and gifts no more for the taking of the air and care for feeding they want trained there for the pH and the bottom the balance of the oxygen for the this to be delayed for the practice of the cone care for the feeding for the days and live for the timeless solution for the histories and the living of the brought for their own for the living and the dead for the brothers and find that for this familiar and this to be the swamp swear swine fine bury the public air for the use slave in the Atlantic water blocked each into the block for the water for the everywhere for the many lost in that for the all brought here for the wandering going here for the door for the gather for the ecology for the keeping the watch of the arm with the shark to bring that extra grace some black thing to the fair for the getting a care feeding for the some hour for the employment you had the living it giving it when the ghost there lost there without the loss sorry this is minute Pause that ourself for the you can have the losing. Colors for the gray side for the money, or the ghost from flying from foes for the chest. And flow for the flattened by the work for the empty to the gain. That for the back for the life to come from for the between the thing for the this be the shining for the door. We sing for the Orishas and hearing that song for the door for the this be the side for the public. Giving visible and making you invisibly at work for the public display. Where we decorated the gods and this will be the unseen. We woke up in the hat that is dipped to the supplies and everything, but the life is all washed down for the river for the owner. New one drink of wine and dishing up of his own for the shedding of what you see now for the recognizing of the samples, and I care for the exhibit that kept me alive to reach that boarding of the landing.
Thought I wasn't gonna be told.
Thought I wasn't gonna be told. Everything for the tale, for the heart, for the searching and the long, for the waving and the light, for refraction, for the drawing of the phrase, so that this would be the void, but you can find the growing up, but what is the difference within after the starting of the exhibit for the door. Changing that subject for the what you can find the mother, what and be like somewhere for the people to hear. A night for the many, for the you can come on after for the plane, for the be school, for the this be the subjective, for the what you can sit down for the fine that, the dancing stuff, and this be raised unpolished, and this is the mind. Chaired into the sleep for the solving of the what you find answers and smoothest of the cities for the education. And moving standing still, we learn for the rest is hanging on the seat for the keeping your straps and loops and flows open for the round and net for the foot for the trap. And this would be the race and compliment for the what you can find footed for the compass and that dance, that balance. We had that driven until the land, or it was a Land Rover that was indigenous for the being upright for the beginning for the height. Cloud came through for the window over the driver for the side for this would be the passenger stop. Stoop for the center for the seat between for the go further for the half of the ever been carried. This would be the butterfly dance. Foggy with the ice strips and this floating ash. And cross that for the black and rock, naked for the fire, for the hearty for the body, for the hear that land for the rhythm, for the strain, for the his, the scream and laughter just before the leap, though the complete. Standing for the somersault, we can have the half and then flow together, travel with the mum of this would be the air. Sweated for the cloud, for the fear, for the until he touching that for the balance of the ground, then put us down for this would be the all we have for the woman. We were born for dragged out of that line up against the sky. Know somebody who's still beside you for the putting their hands and you die. Just in a word, just in a word, just in a navigational challenge. You have that for the reprint, or the permission, or the what would find and balance and undivided for the attention, for the ledger, for the disability domain, for the wrapped up in the title to quote for the power to part, to find a mover for the tied up inside of the canvas strap, for this is classical as a gift. Clues the criminally insane for the gently, for the nudging with the leads, and this is the window for the what they can find dangling from over the crane, for this is dirty white crisscross. This is the pattern for the hanging like the second last note, for the concert, for the over the edge of the sea, for this for the tears, and ain't that for the over the going over for the piano being pushed, and that for the off of the window for the lower down for the play to find the over teacher the math, the disability across that for the teaching. There's something in the terms to be learned, lessons to be learned for the greatest, for the common factor, for the liver, for the land, for the crane, for just everything you like and you know, for the air, for this is snow. Every year, this is divine and rushing to the what you can find interesting for the math and the which of course to get the please to get the answers to this is the hammer with the edge of losing everything for the teaching you to follow. Failing.
Thought I wasn't gonna be told. Everything for the tale, for the heart, for the searching of the long, for the waving of the light, for refraction, for the drawing of the phrase, so that this would be the voice, so that you could find the growing up, but what is the difference within after the starting of the exhibit for the door. Changing that subject for the what you could find the mother, wife, and be like somewhere for the people to hear. A night for the many, for the you can come along after for the plane, for the be school, for the this be the subjective, for the what you can sit down for the fine that, the dancing stuff, and this is he raised unpolished, and this is the mind. Chaired into the sea for the solving of the what you find answers and smoothest of the cities for the education. And moving standing still, we learn for the rest is hanging on the sea for the keeping your straps and loops and flows open for the round and neck for the foot for the trap. And this would be the race and compliment for the what you can find footed for the compass and that dance, that balance. We had that driven until the land, or It was a Land Rover that was intended for the being upright, for the beginning, for the height. Cloud came through with the window over the driver for the side, for this would be the passenger stop. Stoop to the center for the seat between, for the go further, for the have it ever been heavier, this would be the butterfly dance. Foggy with the ice strips and this the floating ash. Across that for the black and rock, naked for the fire, for the heart and for the body, for the hear that land, for the rhythm, the strain, for the hiss, the scream, the laughter, just before the leap, with the throat, the complete. Standing for the somersault, for we can have that half, for the floating of the trouble, between the moment, this would be the air. Sweating for the cloud, for the fear, for the tilting, touching, that for the balance of the ground, for put us down, for this would be the all we have for the moment we were born, for dragged out of that line up against the sky. Know somebody has stood beside you, for the putting their hands and you die. Just in the word, just in the word, just in a navigational challenge. You have that for the reprint, with the permission, with the fine and balance and undivided for the tension, for the ledger, for the distributed domain, for the wrapped up in the tied to the quilt, for the power to pride, the fine and mover, for the tied up inside of the canvas strap, and this is classical as a gift. Glue the criminally insane, for the gently, for the nudging with the leads, and this is the window for the wood, the confined dangling from over the crane, for this is dirty white crisscross. This is the pattern for the hanging like the second last note, for the concert, for the over the edge of the sea, for this with the tears, and the eighth other for the over the going over, for the piano being pushed and that.
But there's no sentiments in that all that's sent to me, for it was meant to be. But there's no sentiments in that all that's sent to me, for it was meant to be nothing. But it was meant to be bent for the obtuse, and you thought it was cute. To be radical enough to be hurtful. Leather's the domain for the this would be the only to bear the out, for the falling of the down, the owner, the stars, for the time of the need for the poor, for the this would be the owner to find the days and death, for the this would warm some crying, and then found for the this extension, this is heavy for the land, for the thing for the arm, for the day was too much, and this would be dragged out for the thing for the wasted by the pole, for the dress to the stain, and how you learn about love for the did not mind at all, for the silent for the steady distance I placed it between us. It was that time of need for the this to be the preserving of the family dinner, for what you could make, and that for the eyes of beverage talk, for the this to be the arithmetic, for the checkers and the tactics, and those to find the cotton 90 for the under tens and nipples. Hands in arithmetic for the knitted for the dollies and the disability provide that for the hoarded quilts and this is bright enough for the torrid migraines and counter pains and what you found a counter attack. Hard like those sparrow like nipples and you have that something simple enough for the preservation for what they are pleased. And the plucking of the sleeve and the tugging of the hand for the hair for the do not kneel for the kiss the hem for the this is what they want for the tokenness of an ear for the something small for enough uses of the sound there's something I can find it for the distant maybe in the underworld for the slider for the guide to lead them over the river for the needing and the remnant. They embark for the older world. But the one for the existed for the sense, the first of this is grievous. Death and that for the need to feel, but still for the can to touch, to be the touching. This is once they did for the word, for the only one to have it be the code for the uncanny moon, for the dying and the pleats and the plum, they bring to find a bullet, a proof hard for this without the memory of the life on earth. Making that place for the continental divide, they daylight with the air of the direction they go up, and this is the shadowy road for the surface, the graining and trickle for the disability, not for the nothing and this is the mill, for this is designed for the sure yourself for the natural cycle. But there's no sentiments in that all that's sent to me, for it was meant to be nothing. But it was meant to be bent for the obtuse, and you thought it was cute. To be radical enough to be hurtful. Leather's the domain for the this would be the only to bear the out, for the falling of the down, the owner, the stars, the time of the need for the poor, for the this would be the owner to find the days and death, for the this would warm some crying, and then found for the this extension, this is heavy for the land, for the thing for the arm, for the day was too much, and this would be dragged out for the thing for the wasted by the pole, to the dress to the stain, and how you learn about love for the did not mind at all, for the silent for the steady distance I placed it between us. It was that time of need for the this to be the preserving of the family dinner, for what you could make, and that for the eyes of black for the talk, for the this to be the arithmetic for the checkers and the tactics, and those to find the cotton 90 for the under tens and nipples. Hands in arithmetic for the knitted for the dollies and the this really provide that for the hoarded quilts and this is bright enough for the torrid migraines and counter pains and what you found a counter attack. Or like those sparrow like nipples and you have that something simple enough for the preservation for what they are pleased. And the plucking of the sleeve and the tugging of the hand for the hair, for the do not kneel for the kiss the hem, for the this is what they want for the tokenness of an ear, for the something small for enough uses of the sound there's something I can find it for the distant, maybe in the underworld, for the slider for the guide to lead them over the river, for the needing and the remnant. They embark for the older world, but the one for the existed for the sense, the first of this is grievous. Death and that for the need to feel, the still for the can to touch, to be the touching. This is once they did for the word, for the only one to have it be the code for the uncanny moon, for the dying and the pleats and the plum, they bring to find a bullet, a proof hard for this without the memory of the life on earth. Making that place for the continental divide, day to daylight, for the air of the direction to go up, and this is the shadowy road for the surface, the grinning and trickle, for the dissipated non, for the nothing and miss of the melted, for the design for the sure yourself, for the natural cycle. Water your dream for the forgotten white. This the aspen, the color for the sulfur, for the trembling of what you can find, the center for the redemption song, and this would be the tainted leaves, and not tell that girl. And there is to reflect the passion, the smell for the bare neck of the summer, and trail for the hairs that disappearing below that bottom of the cutoff, for that you can find an archback for the cycling of the strain, for the ascendant of the hill, for the better for the fields, and you can find the suburbia for the treacherous as an empty, for the can hear there for the only the same night it was lost in that track. The air pulse and the dandelion for the pollen, for the blue, for the green stalks, and that was all. And that was S for the sun, taking me for the over the car, for the another against the down, for the low, for the fifth, and then down for the block, for the branches of where you find the furious cloud of dawn to chase us away, for this and knowing how to fail when it lie. Inside of the merry-go for the golden stains, and this morning for the swarm. Yesterday the rooftop for the cat bursting in enough, the feeling for the ruined upon the lips of the broad, for the broke raw. Throughout the night, for this to be the here, for the earth, for the sutter, for the itself, for this to be the owner, the intimacy, to inspire to keep us low and apart for the age. I knew I only for the idea, for the longing, the voice inside of that, for the whispering, through the chinking, for the vagabond, for the outlies, and that for the ground that made it. Dream, drying grass, and it's a journey for the dude. The darkness below the walls to lift up for the sky, the backs of the grillies here to relish. Secrets that was sound in the ice, or bound after the sound for the underneath of what you can find cold for the past release, disappearing for the pinnacle of my life at the standing and beyond the brink of the half of the cloud for the final cakes in the flat grace and the demise of the green for this is surmounted for the craggy for the boundary between us and you, the place in me and the earth and the receiving of my song. But there's no sentiments in that all that sent to me, for it was meant to be nothing, but it was meant to be bent for the obtuse, and you thought it was cute to be radical enough to be hurtful. Leather's the domain for the this would be the only to bury the out for the falling of the down, the owner, the stars, the time of the need for the poor, for the this would be the only to find the days and death, for this a almost and crying, and then found for the this extension, this a heavy pit of it, heavy for the rain, but the thing for the arm for the it was too much, and this would be dragged out for the thing for the wasted by the pause, for the dress to the stain, and how you land about love for the did not mind at all, for the silent for the steady distance I placed it between us. It was that time of need for the this would be the preserving of the family dinner for what you could make and left with the eyes of black for the talk for the this would be the arithmetic for the checkers and the tactics and those who's trying to cotton 90 for the undertents and nipples. Hands and arithmetic for the knitted for the dollies and the disability to find out for the hoarded quilts and this is bright enough for the tour the migraines and counter pains and what you found and counter attack. Hard like those sparrow like nipples and you have that something simple enough for the preservation for what they're pleased. And the plucking of the sleeve and the tugging of the hand for the hair for the do not kneel for the kiss the hand for the this is what they want for the tokenness of an if for the something small enough useless for the sound there's something I can find it for the distant maybe in the underworld for the slider for the guide to lead them over the river for the needing and the remnant or they embark for the older world or the one for the existed for the sense the first of this a grievous death and that for the need to feel the still the can't be touched to be touched and this is once they did for the word for the only one to have it be the cope for the uncanny movement for the dying and pleats and the plumb the clean to find the bulletproof heart for this without the memory of the life on earth. That place for the continental divide, day to daylight, with the air of the direction to go up, and this is the shadowy road for the surface, the grinning and trickle for the dissipated non, for the nothing and miss of the melting, for this design for the sure yourself, for the natural cycle. Water your dream for the forgotten white, and this the aspen, the color for the sulfur, for the trembling of what you can find, the center for the redemption song, and this would be the tainted leaves, and not tell that girl. There is to reflect the passion, the smell for the bare neck of the summer, and trail for the hairs that disappearing below that bottom of the cutoff, for that you can find an archback for the cycling of the strain, for the ascendant of the hill, for the better for the fields, and you can find the suburbia for the treacherous as an empty room, for the can hear them for the only the same night it was lost in that track. The air pulse and the dandelion for the pollen, for the blue, for the green stalks, and that was all. And that was S for the someone taking me for the over the car, for the another against the down, for the low, for the fence, and then down for the end for the block, for the branches of where you find the furious cloud of dawn to chase us away for this and knowing how to fail when it lie. Inside of the merry-go for the golden stains, and this morning for the swarm. This is the rooftop for the cat bursting in enough, the feeling for the ruined upon the lips of the broad, for the broke raw. Throughout the night for this to be the here, for the earth for the sutter, for the itself, for this to be the owner, the intimacy, to inspire to keep us low and apart for the age. I knew I only for the idea, for the longing, the voice inside of that, for the whispering, through the chinking, for the vagabond, for the outlies, and that for the ground, and the made ironic dream, drying grass, and it's a journey for the dude. The darkness below the walls to lift up for the sky, the backs of the grillies here to relish. Secrets that was sound in the ice, or bound after the sound for the underneath of what you can find cold for the past release disappearing for the pinnacle of my life at the standing and beyond the brink with the half of the cloud for the fine cake in the flat grace and the demise of the green for distance surrounded for the craggy for the boundary between us and you the place in me and the earth and the receiving of my soul.